So were you successful? Let's start with the favorite feature. We managed that in the product Dart file. Here we have the toggle favorite status method. And in the end, it's here where I want to send a HTTP request to also save that new status for the product we're updating. And of course, we have the ID of the product available in here to the server. So let's import the HTTP package here because we'll need that to send HTTP requests. And whilst technically not required, because it exposes so many features, I'll bundle them all again under the HTTP prefix. Now we can send a request. And as I mentioned, I want to employ optimistic updating here, which means that I first change this and then I roll it back if it fails. Hence, I'll first of all store the old status. So old status is favorite, and this copies the old status here. It makes sure that we keep that old status before we then change it. So here we then change the favoriting status and we update the UI. That's that optimistic updating part. We do that before the request is sent, and then we do send a request. And now here I want to send a patch request because the goal, of course, is to update our product, or a specific product here, of course, with the new favorite status. I want to keep all the existing data there as it is and just exchange the favorite status. So therefore here I patch, and the URL I want to target is the same URL I used here for updating or for deleting a product, because we need a URL that includes the ID. The ID here is available because it is a property of this class, and since this of course always will execute for concrete instances of this class, right, the ID will be set, and therefore we'll target a specific ID and send our request to that ID. Now the body is the data which I want to change, or describes the change. And here we want to JSON encode, and for that I need to import Dart convert here. That's important. Add that import. With that import added, here we can call JSON encode and encode a map where I only want to set the isFavorite key. And again, that should match the name you have here on your server. So that isFavorite name you have there as well. And the new value here is the new value we have here. So isFavorite. After it was switched, because of course I want to store that new value, which we all use locally on the server. Now normally that should succeed, of course, but it might fail. So we can use async await here and wrap this into a try catch block to roll this back. So let's add catch error here and return a future in here. And I have one curly brace too much. Should have it here. So now we have that block, and in here I would want to roll this back. So here I want to set isFavorite, which refers to my isFavorite property up there, and set this equal to the old status which I saved. So I set this equal to old status here. If we do that and we reload this, let's see whether it works. So first of all, without an error here. If I do that, here for example, I already marked this as a favorite on the server by setting it to true there. If I switch this, it's updated here, and also here it's now false. So this works. And if I do this multiple times, this also works. It's false here, it's false here. So that works. Now let's simulate an error again with the good old trick of removing the JSON thing here. Let's do a hot refresh because we lose our local state when we do a hot reload here. And let's try this again. Whether the updating works. If I set this, it gets checked and it's not reverted. Now, it doesn't end up on the server because we have an error, of course, but we don't revert the value. Now, for one, I'm not calling notify listeners here. I should do that here because otherwise the UI can't update. You have to call that to update the UI, just as we're doing it up here. But that's actually not the reason or the problem here. Instead, the problem really is what we had before, that the HTTP package only throws its own error for get and post requests if the server returns an error status code. For patch, put, delete, it doesn't do that. Now we still might want to leave try catch here, because for example, if we have a network error, we still might want to run that logic and we still might get a normal exception. But I also want to manually extract my response here and store it in that final variable, and then check if response response status code is greater or equal than 400, which means we have an error. And in that case, also do that rollback logic. And since I have some code duplication here, of course, you could also add an extra method, which doesn't return anything, with an underscore, because it should be private and only be callable from inside this file and class, which I'll name setFavValue. And there I expect to get the new value as a boolean. And in there, I simply set isFavorite equal to the new value and call notify listeners. And now we can simply call setFavValue to old status here. And this saves us one extra line of code and avoids a bit of code duplication. Now with that change, so now that we manually check the status code, we should have a setup where we have successful optimistic updating. So I try to change this and I reflect the new status in the UI, but then this should get rolled back, and it does as soon as we have that error. So now we have proper optimistic updating in place. And with that, of course, let me fix that error to again check whether it still works if we are able to send that request. So let's do a reload here. Mark this, and now it stays marked, and we also see that here on the back end that it's true. So this works. Now we are able to update our favorite status and also store that on a server.